If you've ever shot with an older Nikon lens like this 28mm f2.8 AIS lens or this 50mm AFD lens, you've probably noticed these second set of aperture numbers, one in big, bold white and another smaller scale just beneath it. What's the second set for? Why are they there? Today, we're diving into the subtle but brilliant piece of Nikon engineering that helped define the SLR system from the late 70s to the 2000s. Spoiler, it has nothing to do with manual focusing or exposure settings, but everything to do with what's going on inside of the viewfinder. In 1977, Nikon introduced AI, or automatic indexing. It allowed lenses to communicate their aperture settings to the camera without a manual indexing ritual like the Nikon Shuffle. But Nikon went one step further. They wanted photographers to see the actual aperture number inside the viewfinder using a clever mechanical and optical system that displayed it directly. This system was called ADR, or Aperture Direct Readout. ADR uses a tiny optical system, either a light tunnel or a periscope, from above and reflects it into the viewfinder. That brings us to that second scale. These smaller numbers are placed in the lower part of the aperture ring. Why? So that ADR window, whether it's in a FA or an F3 or an F4, can read the aperture clearly and correctly. Let's start with the F2S. This is a pre-AI system, so it doesn't have ADR. But you can see the aperture values inside the viewfinder. It's a mechanical display, driven by the coupling between the lens aperture ring and the finder. You had to perform the classic Nikon Shuffle to index the lens correctly. This display is located along the bottom of the viewfinder and tracks the aperture via a physical linkage, not an optical system. Now, the F2A and the F2AS, these finders introduced AI compatibility and ADR using an optical periscope built into the DP11 and the DP12. Look through the finder and you'll see the aperture value show up in the bottom of the viewfinder. That's coming directly from those small numbers on the lens. The F3 moved the ADR window to the top center of the viewfinder. It's subtle, but the number comes from a similar periscope system, just in a more central layout, thanks to the new LCD for the shutter speed in the top left of the viewfinder. Before we mention the F4, I want to mention a bit of a wild card, the Nikon FA. It was released in 1983, and it was the first Nikon to offer shutter priority exposure mode. But what makes it interesting is how it handled viewfinder displays. On the top of the FA viewfinder, there's an LCD, an ADR window, and a window for the shutter speed. The FA uses a clever mechanical system that covers the ADR window and reveals the shutter speed window when you're in shutter priority mode, because the aperture is displayed on the LCD. And when you switch to aperture priority, it does the opposite. It covers the manual shutter speed display, since you aren't manually choosing it, and the shutter speed is displayed on the LCD. It's a neat example of how Nikon was trying to keep the viewfinder clean and context sensitive, long before digital viewfinder displays became the norm. On the F4, the ADR window is bright, large, and easy to read. It's in the top center of the viewfinder. The optics were improved, so the number is bold and easy to see. And in shutter priority mode, the mechanical ADR window is still visible, but your actual working aperture is shown on the digital readout at the bottom of the finder. Nikon wanted both systems to work together. The F5 continues that tradition. Same top center ADR placement, even sharper. In all modes on the F5, you will be able to see the aperture displayed digitally at the bottom of the frame, which is different than the F4. And this dual system design allowed for both full backwards compatibility and modern automation. Finally, the Nikon F6, Nikon's last professional film body. It didn't include an ADR window at all. Instead, it moved fully into the digital era by letting users input non-CPU lens data manually into the camera. Once entered, the F6 could display the selected aperture digitally in the viewfinder, even when using legacy AI and AI-S lenses. It marked the end of the mechanical ADR era in favor of digital integration. Here's a cool AI lens wrinkle. Many older Nikon lenses were AI converted after the fact. Nikon themselves offered official conversions, which included adding the second aperture scale. But some conversions were done by individuals or third parties. So you might even come across lenses with a paper strip glued onto the ring to provide the second scale, a DIY solution so the ADR system would still work in compatible bodies. ADR might seem like a small thing, but it made a huge difference in the field. Nikon prioritized visual, mechanical information. You don't need to guess or read battery-powered readouts. You could actually see the aperture. And the second scale, that was a thoughtful, mechanical solution. Simple, durable, and designed for clarity inside the viewfinder. So the next time you pick up an AI or an AI-S lens, take a second look at that smaller aperture scale. It's not just for decoration, it was designed for a specific job. If you enjoyed this dive into Nikon history and mechanics, drop a like and let me know in the comments. And if you're into classic film gear, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.